So the simple fact that I could pick this up with one hand, walk around, park it wherever I want, that alone is already worth the recommendation. Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you what a night is like with my Skywatcher Star Adventurer Pro. Now I'm not going to go over the pros and cons of this mount because I think that there are other videos out there that can do it better than me. But what I will tell you is my personal reasons why I think a mount like this is the best starting mount for a beginner, whether you have experience or no experience in the world of astronomy. And a little bit about myself is that, if you know me, I am extremely competitive when it comes to tennis. And my practices tend to be 10, 20 times more grueling than an actual match. And I don't remember the matches that I've won, but I remember the matches that I've either suffered through or that I lost miserably. And the way I practice is I'm going to practice that same shot 1,000 times and execute it 1,000 times before I even claim that I can own that shot. So, I think now you understand why I think that this mount is great, because this is a very basic mount. It does not have any go-to capabilities. You will have to find your own target and you will have to frame your own target. And as you can imagine, that is really difficult in the sea of stars. But just remember that if you're willing to suffer through this early period and you pick up the great skill that is, you recognize some of the star patterns in the night sky, that skill will carry you with you for the rest of the hobby. And I think that, this mount has brought me to the lowest of lows. Those are the nights where I couldn't find my target, or by the time I found it, it was already too late and I'm already too tired. And those are the nights that I remember the most, because I learned, basic things like, be patient, keep working at it. And, if you can suffer through this mount, then I am more than positive that you can suffer through the rest of what this hobby has to offer. So with that being said, let's go on and start to set this up. So before we start the night and polar align, there are a couple of things that you should be familiar with first. Make sure you're familiar with some of the bolts and screws and the knobs that will make fine-tuning adjustment to your mount. So first of all, you want to make sure that you're on level ground. So check the bubble level here and make sure you're as level as possible. Secondly, you want to loosen up these azimuth adjustment bolts. Now there's another one on the other side, so you need to loosen up both of them. But the purpose of that is so that when you loosen it up, then you can use these azimuth adjustment knobs to make your sort of your left and right adjustments to center Polaris as best as you can. And then when you're done, make sure that you tighten up these bolts again. Otherwise, I'm not sure that your mount will track accurately if these bolts are loose. Then you want to dial in your latitude, and for that, all you need to do is loosen up this handle, and then look up the location in which you're imaging, and you should be able to find the latitude measurement, and simply dial it in as close as you can. Now you won't be dead center with Polaris, but the whole point is that you're close enough, and you could most likely see Polaris in your poloscope, if you've got this latitude dialed in, this is basically your up and down motion for the adjustment. So I think there is an optimal time to do your polar alignment, and that is because, you know, sometimes when you look through the poloscope, you see more than one stars, and you have no idea which one is Polaris. So I think that if you're able to set up early and begin your polar alignment around the twilight hours, then the sky should still be fairly bright, but it will be dim and dark enough so that only the brightest stars will be able to shine through. So in this case, if you look through the poloscope, then the only star that you should be able to see would be Polaris, and you wouldn't be confused with something else. So I hope that helps. And once it gets a little bit more dark, then we can begin polar alignment. Here's another tip. If you're still having trouble finding Polaris, and trust me, don't worry about it, because we all have those nights where Polaris is just, for some reason, unfindable. What I usually like to do on those nights is to purposely park my my mount so that as I look through the poloscope, I would actually see these tree branches. And the reason why I did that is because I know that my Polaris for my area, it would be right next to one of these tree branches. So now if I set my latitude adjustment correctly, then I should be already, you know, more or less in the area. So therefore, if I know Polaris is around here, around one of these tree branches, and if I look through the poloscope and I see tree branches, then I know that Polaris for me should be around the area. That makes it easier for me to hunt down which star is Polaris, and it makes polar alignment easier. I hope you found it useful. Well, you saw the clouds rolled in as soon as I finished setting up the polar alignment. It's part of the hobby. There's not much you can do about it. And my advice to the beginners out there, I know you guys are really eager to go out there with your new equipment, or you've learned about a new target. Don't be disappointed, because you can't control it, and instead you can use that time to still go out there and, you know, just practice. You know, work on your balancing, get familiar with your equipment. There are all kinds of things you can do even on a cloudy night. And if you can't be out there, then, you know, spend that time, read articles, watch videos, and just, you know, pick up as much skills as you can possibly pick up during these downtime. But I do want to go over what my original plans were yesterday, and that was to take advantage of the moonless sky and image something that is broadband with a lot of natural color. And my target was going to be the very popular M45 Pleiades, and it's one of the most beautiful, easily found targets in the night sky, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons why it's so popular. Now the Pleiades, there are some characteristics about that, about the open star cluster. So as I mentioned, it's an open star cluster. That means that they were formed from the same molecular cloud, and they're actually loosely bound by their individual gravities. But more on that later about gravity. All of the stars are B-type, meaning that they're extremely energetic, but therefore really short-lived. And they shine the characteristic blue light, which is one of the reasons why it's so beautiful to capture. It's thought that they were formed but within the last 100 million years. And they're also interacting with surrounding gravitational forces. And it is thought that in about 250 million years from now, and from our perspective, they're going to be drift apart because they're being pulled by external and stronger gravitational forces that, from our perspective, they will no longer be recognized as, the Pleiades cluster. They're going to just slowly drift apart. And lastly, it is also known as a reflection nebula because it's passing through what is known as interstellar space dust. And I mentioned the B-type stars. They're really bright and they shine a blue light, so therefore they're illuminating surrounding space dust. And it's, like I said, it's a beautiful cluster to image, especially if you can capture the faint blue glow within the dust. And to help me capture that, I will be using the William Optics Spacecat 51. This is coming in at 250 millimeters, and I've paired it with my old Canon T2i, and this is a stock unmodded camera, and I think it'll be just fine because there's hardly any hydrogen alpha to be captured, so I don't need to have a hydrogen alpha modded camera for that. Any stock DSLR will do. And if I were to take this apart, I will show you the filter I'll be using. Now, I live in San Francisco, and with my Bordeaux 8, Bordeaux 9 skies, it's impossible for me to image without any filter. And hopefully you guys can see it. This is the SVBONY CLS filter. CLS stands for City Light Suppression, and I really do like this filter because I think it does a good enough job blocking out artificial light and minimizing that sky glow. And most importantly, this is relatively inexpensive, and that's hard to find in the world of astrophotography. It's about $70 or $80 from Amazon, and yeah, I think it does a great job. The only negative, well, there are actually two negatives that I can think of, is that number one, it's a clip filter. The form factor means that I have to stick my finger in and out of the camera opening to install or uninstall the filter. And I don't know about you, but if I can help it, I don't like sticking my hand into the camera. That's just me. And also because of the clip form factor, these will not go onto the back of refractor or field flattener or focal reducers. But if you're using a DSLR, I think this is a great general purpose broadband light pollution filter, and it's relatively inexpensive, so I highly recommend it. And hopefully at the end of the night I can show you what this filter along with a stock DSLR can produce. So now I'm just gonna wait until the clouds go away. I don't know if I'll even get a chance tonight, but in the meantime, I'll move on and show you how to properly balance the Star Adventure Pro with this thing. So let's go. Okay, so let's balance our telescope on the Skywatcher Star Adventure Pro. First thing I want to mention is that, if you can, get yourself a longer dove plate like this one, because with it being longer, you have more real estate to play with, giving you more flexibility about how you want to balance your declination axis. So I'm just going to do this. Then I'm going to make sure that I loosen up the RA clutch right here, the black ring, until it's able to move freely. Then I want to make sure that when the bar is at horizontal like this, that there's no movement on either side. Now right now it's dipping down because the refractor and the camera is a little bit too heavy relative to the counterweight. So what I'm going to do is counteract that by pushing this counterweight bar further out so that it can help balance this. Okay, so now that I'm fairly balanced, I think, the next thing you want to make sure is that you want to account for the position of your lens when you're actually imaging. Now, I mentioned in the previous video that a lot of my targets are, actually this is not even balanced, but I'll fix it. A lot of my targets are straight up near zenith, so I'm going to position my telescope to point straight up, like that. And make sure that as you're balancing, you take off the lens cap, because this has weight as well. And make sure that I'm not hooked up right now, but make sure that all of your wires, all your power cord and everything is already connected, because that drag will create unbalance and weight issues for you. So you see how it's drastically changed the balance now that my lens is pointing straight up, because it's not sticking out anymore, so it's pointing straight up. So now I have to account for that, and to do that, it's telling me the side of the counterweight is too heavy, so I'm going to move this inward. So this is pretty good. You kind of want to watch it for maybe a few seconds and make sure it doesn't go anywhere else. But I think that this is good enough as far as balance is concerned. And now that it's balanced horizontally, you kind of want to double check and make sure that in another position it stays balanced as well. And I think it's pretty good. You see how that it's not going anywhere. So this is the kind of balance that you want to achieve. And once again, don't rush this, because there's no point in rushing through either your polar alignment or your balancing when you end up with pictures that are full of star trails. You want pin sharp pictures, and to do that some nights it takes a lot of time, and with practice this can be achieved relatively quickly. So now that I'm balanced, it's still cloudy out there, so I'm really hoping that at some point I can go out there and actually have a session. So wish me luck. But if you take your time out of star trails, that I've gone too far, don't rush through this, because, and like I said, try not to rush through this. And once again, don't rush this. You want pin sharp pictures with practice. So now that I'm balanced, so this is pretty good. Yeah, I screwed up. So I can either stand here and hit you with the see what had happened was, or I can tell you what actually happened, and you'll find this happen a lot in astrophotography, that one night of imaging spills into night number 3 or night number 4. What happened was that I screwed up. I usually set my camera to its highest ISO as I'm locating and framing my targets. But last night I forgot to reset the ISO for the actual imaging session, so I ended up with a batch of data that was super overexposed and virtually useless. I cannot use it. So I'm going to try to set up again tonight and hopefully capture the Pleiades. And one of the benefits of, I guess, me screwing up last night is that it's actually cleared tonight earlier, and I will actually have more imaging time with Pleiades than I did last night. So yeah, so I'll set that up and hopefully I don't lose any more credibility tonight. Well, nothing spells astrophotography like having your project spills onto the 4th night. Unfortunately, this was the case, and this is the case for many occasions. If you're a beginner, it is disheartening to set up and then pack up, but all I can say is, the weather is out of your hands. Just roll along with it, don't give up. You just gotta keep doing this. And I hope that, the 4th time will be the charm. Although it doesn't even look all that great, so I just hope that we'll get something tonight. Well, it's now night number 5, and that is because last night, as soon as I set up, we were hit with 25 to 30 miles per hour wind, and so therefore anything that came through the Spacecat 51 was a blurry mess. I could not use it. And also, unlike night number 1, the conditions have somewhat deteriorated to now we have a 40 to 50% illuminated moon that is really close to Pleiades. So we'll see how it turns out. Hopefully the moonlight won't wash off a lot of the blues from the Pleiades, but I just want to say that those of you who have been doing this for a long time, you guys know all about this. The dread that you feel when you try to image the same thing for the 4th or 5th consecutive night, I believe that's what the definition of insanity is. And I think for all the beginners out there, just know that this will eventually happen to you. And don't lose hope. All you can do is just smile at the weather, plan for the next night, and just keep going. I mean, what else can you do?